Hi, I'm odeean. Today I'm going to have a look at the High Dream 12-inch vinyl figure of Grendizer, or Goldorak, depending on where you come from. To the novice Grendizer fan, which is me, there's not a lot to distinguish this Grendizer from other makes just by looking at pictures of it. To my eyes, it's very similar to a lot of others, and I can hardly even tell what it's made out of from pictures. So the best way to distinguish him is the box. That's why I'm keeping the box in frame here. Now, on the front of the box, it doesn't really tell you that much either, just 12-inch action figure collection, but it does have a very distinctive line work on the front of it, which is what you'll normally see in listings for this if you're going to buy it online. Turning the box around, and this is really just the slipcase, I've pulled the box out. Up the top here, it does say produced by HL Product, www.highdream.com, and High Dream, I think, is who's made this, and when I bought it, it was described as High Dream Goldorak. So given that it's written on the box, I think that's what it is. Once we get him open, this is the robot himself. Now it's all vinyl, and when I bought this I wasn't aware of what the materials were. I couldn't find out much about it, and it was about $100, and I just thought, you know, I want something not too expensive. I can put it on the shelf with my 12-inch DX Mazinger just until there is something nicer to come along, and I couldn't find any guaranteed die-cast big ones. I had looked at the Soul of Chogokin release from about 10 years ago, and it seemed a bit too small. I wasn't wanting that. This guy was more like a compromise. I'm not fully happy with it, but it is a decent compromise and will be like a stopgap measure until I can get something better. Zooming right on in up here, you can see that the paintwork is pretty good, and most vinyl figures that I've got are just Godzilla or what have you, and they don't have sophisticated paintwork at all. So I'm surprised to see that being vinyl, the lines are pretty clean, so they've done a decent job with it. And it does look kind of okay. We've got a ball joint on the neck here, a cut kind of, you can see in there, it looks like a ball on the inside. I can see a bit of red vinyl ball on there, so it's a ball joint on the elbow. There's no swivel here, but we do get a swivel at the underneath of the bicep. There's a ratcheted elbow, which is pretty cool for a vinyl figure. Swivel at the fist. While I'm up here, I will mention that this weapon does pop off like that, and not that you use this, but if you want it to be kind of accurate when he pulls his weapons out, which I'll show you in a minute, you can take them off the shoulder so he doesn't double up on that. Moving down here, there's no waist, balls at the hips, more ratchet at the knee. It's a pretty good ratchet. I mean, look at that. It easily holds the whole weight of the figure, and it's actually stronger than it needed to be for a vinyl, to be honest. And we've got balls at the feet. That pretty much sums up his articulation. We get the two weapons, and don't know what these are called because I'm not that big a fan of the show, just how he looks, but they do look alright to me. They're not exactly the same as what's on the shoulder. They're more realistic weapons. These are more stylized curves. Now, if you look at the other side, you can see that they peg into each other, which I'm going to do. The plastic feels, let me hold this back a bit. The plastic feels a little bit hard. I mean, they needed it hard so it doesn't sag, but I can imagine that this would pretty easily split, so some care would want to be taken when separating it, because once you break that off, you're kind of screwed. You can hear that brittle sound, but I prefer it that way. I don't really like to have spongy plastic on my figures. He ships with the weapon holding fists on. I'm going to attempt to put the weapon through this fist, but it's not exactly easy. That one's not too bad. Well, his hand's coming off. Let's try the other side. I think that one's going to be actually worse. There we go. Doesn't want to come right through the other side. It probably needs a little bit of work with a file or something on the hole on the bottom, because it doesn't want to poke right through. Anyway, we don't need it to poke right through right now. What I can do is just show you that he can hold his double-ended weapon in one hand like that. It's pretty cool. You've seen this just fall off then, and it does tend to pop off a little bit when you're manhandling it, but in the normal situation, there's kind of a little bit of a nub here and it holds it in. Now the reason this separates is so that we can put that fist down and get the fully closed fist that you can see here. And I think the point of that is that you can fit it a little bit easier on the inside of the forearm guard like that to simulate his attack. I will say though that that's more of a fan thing than official with this figure, although everyone does this. I've seen everyone doing this with Grendizer. With this particular figure, it doesn't want to do it now. It is too loose. Putting this over in that position, at least with that fist, it kind of stops the fist locking in, and you end up with a bit of that happening. It's no big deal. It's not as if it's a toy. We're going to play toy games with it, but on the shelf, if you put it in a downwards position, it may end up falling off. Apart from the fists, we do get kind of karate chop hands, or neutral pose hands, I guess you could call them. And they just plug in the same way. I found that these neutral pose ones are much tighter and fit better than the other two. Probably just a coincidence of how they were cast, given that this is vinyl. Traditionally, Grendizer always has a problem with these pieces bumping into the bicep region. But because this figure is vinyl, I think all they've done is kind of just ignore that, and when you bend it up, they just squish out of the way. And it's no big deal because there's nothing much to scratch here because it is vinyl. It's pretty durable paint, pretty durable materials, and no matter which way you do it, there's a squishy way that it will bend. So if you had the point pointing up, you can actually bend the whole point up like that, or if you had it on the side, they can separate a little bit to accommodate that bicep area. Too much of it though does work off this section, cause it to fall off. The figure does allow for some half decent poses, but don't get your hopes up because this is no SRC. This is about as dynamic as what it can get, and it does have a real bad tendency to just fall over, and that's mainly because the balls on the ankles down here are not, there's not enough range in those ankles to make the feet flat in these weird poses, so it is not very stable in that position. For some size comparison, I did mention a minute ago that I got this guy to put on the same shelf as the DX Mazinger, so here they are together. Very similar in size, and they do look just right together, except the Mazinger being the ultimate toy and this being a kind of also-ran. Mazinger is a lot more glossy and high-end looking. The red bits are see-through plastic, whereas on this guy the red bits are just painted on. Every part of the black here is really super glossy, whereas this guy you can clearly tell that it's painted onto a kind of almost matte surface. So here's just a stopgap. He's not the be-all and end-all of Grendizer. Here he is with his good buddy Godzilla. A little bit out of scale. This Godzilla I think is huge compared to Grendizer, but even on the shelf he's more like an 11-inch figure. He's more like 12, so don't really go that well together. Here he is with Mr. Stay Puft. The same problems here. There's a lot of these other guys I've got are really more like 11 than 12. So again, on the shelf, he looks a little bit small if you like everything to be nice and uniform. And here's my final comparison. I know this is straying a little bit too far now. Robbie the Robot. The only reason I bring these up together is because these are two big guys that I've got that are vinyl and look the kind of same on the surface. So I know they don't belong, but there you have it. I only really have one kind of major dislike with the figure, and that's because there's no ball or tilt in the wrist. You can't do this pose where you try to join the two halves of the weapon together above his head, because it ends up bending this joining piece in the middle and it will snap it off. You can try to bend the elbows so that they're facing forward with the elbows more tilted backwards to get it parallel to each other, but it never really reaches perfect position where it really is parallel, so it always stretches the joint. So if you want an over-the-head pose, it's just not possible. This has been my video review for the 12-inch vinyl High Dream figure of Grendizer / Goldorak. I'm Odeean. Thank you for watching.